Kayla.
And I'm Mark Allen.
And this is our channel. Here we talk about all things Disney as well as how to plan your Walt Disney World vacation.
So if that interests you, hit that subscribe button and stay tuned.
First of all, we switched things up. We traded sides. The light seemed better over here, so I wanted to sit on this side.
Because she's selfish.
No, I am not. That's rude.
Anyway.
Last week, we talked all about our debt-free journey and kind of how that has impacted us as a married couple and just kind of how that's impacted our lives in general. So today we're actually going to talk to you about how we have paid off all of the debt. So if you've missed the video last week, make sure you go check that out. I will link that above. But today, yeah, let's talk about how to pay off some debt and how you can pay off some debt.
So the first thing that we did to start paying off our debt seems kind of like an oxymoron, but it's actually to save $1,000 for an emergency fund. So this is very crucial to really any beginning of any debt payoff, because if you don't have an emergency fund, you can find yourself relying on credit cards or another form of debt if something happens. So it's very, very important to have that emergency fund for a rainy day. So I can think of one instance for us when an emergency fund was very, very crucial for our debt-free journey. And
it was actually kind of a funny story. So it was Easter Day, and we had just walked out of church and Mark Allen noticed that his tire was flat. And we were supposed to be going over to my grandparents' house that day, and it was like this whole thing, and we were like, oh my gosh. But then we both kind of just stopped and we were like, wait, this isn't a big deal because we have an emergency fund that we can just pay for it and move on.
Yeah.
So we did. We just went over to the little car mechanic place thing to get the new tires, and we just bought the tires and called it good, and then we left and we didn't have to think about it again. Granted, we did have to then refill our emergency fund back in, but we didn't have to stress about it because we had the money on hand ready to go. And then we also didn't create more debt for ourselves because of that emergency situation.
Yep. It was still kind of funny though too, because as soon as I saw that flat tire, my initial reaction was like, oh my gosh, like I have to freak out about this. Like it's a crisis. Like how are we gonna pay for this? Like it was the first time that we had used the emergency fund. And as soon as I realized, oh yeah, we have this emergency fund, it just created such a less stressful situation that normally for most people would be a stressful situation.
Okay, and the second thing that we did was sell everything. We sold so much stuff. We basically did a huge purge of literally everything in our house, and we sold anything that we deemed not essential to life. So, I mean, obviously, yes, we did keep some sentimental things and whatnot, but like literally everything from some of our furniture to, which we didn't really have very much to begin with. We only lived in a 1-bedroom apartment, but like we sold our chairs and we sold like a bunch of kitchen stuff that people honestly had gotten us for our wedding, but we just never use it because we don't entertain very much and we don't have a huge kitchen, so we don't need it. I mean, heck, we even sold, there were these little blue plastic luggage tags that we were like, nobody's gonna buy these, but we posted them on Facebook Marketplace for $2 and someone freaking bought them, you guys. Like somebody literally drove. So they drove, I think it said kind of where they were coming from, and it was,
they drove half an hour for $2 luggage tags.
Yeah.
That they could have gone to Walmart or Target or somewhere.
I was a little blown by that. It was very funny, but like it really, like we sold everything. My parents thought we were crazy. They're like, what are you doing? Why are you selling everything? But it did help. Now, I will say, we didn't make so much money doing that we like took a huge chunk of our debt out. But what it did was it changed our mentality. It brought us to a place where we weren't thinking about, like, we weren't constantly just buying things. We were constantly getting rid of things and selling things. And so when we were going to the store and we were shopping, it wasn't oh, let's buy this, let's buy this. It's oh, we just got rid of a bunch of stuff like that. Do we really need more of this? And so it kind of helped to get our spending under control a little bit. But at the same time, we were earning some money. Now, granted, this tip can actually work really well if you do have assets to sell. This is a very hard thing to do, and I understand that. But like Dave Ramsey, literally, he always says, like, sell the truck, sell the car, sell the boat, sell the motorcycle. Like, if you have things like that you're like, you spent ridiculous amounts of money on, or maybe you have a car that you are financing and you're way upside down in that loan. Think about trading that car in for something a little bit cheaper that you can either pay cash for, or maybe that will at least help decrease that debt. That way you're not having to worry about that specific thing. Because the thing is that once you get your debt paid off, you'll be able to save up your money very quickly to be able to buy the things that you really want. But there's no reason to buy things that you really want now when you can't actually afford them. So that is something that can be helpful with this tip of sell everything. We just, unfortunately, we don't have anything that we could sell like that because we live in an apartment.
Yeah.
And we have nothing of value.
I think when it really comes to selling things, I think one valuable lesson that I took from selling the stuff, and Kayla touched on it a little bit too, is it really teaches you what's a want and what's a need. Mm-hmm. And I think when we were shopping, going, you know, through the store or something, we would see something like, oh my gosh, like, we need this. Well, it wasn't a need. It was
we didn't
a
actually
want.
need it.
And that's one thing that we continue to really, really focus on when we're shopping on Amazon or Target or something like that. Do stop and say to yourself, you know, do you really need this item or do you want this item? And sometimes, yeah, we've caved to those wants.
And there's nothing wrong with getting things that you want. But if you are in a place where you're trying to meet goals, your goals need to be more important than your, like, spur of the moment needs.
Totally. I think the other thing, when it really came to us for selling things, some of you might be questioning, oh, well, why didn't you sell your car? Like, you owed $19,000 on it. Well, that was Kayla's car that we were talking about in the other video. And for us, that was our one and only, like, truly reliable car. I still drive a 2003 vehicle, and
it literally, the roof, the ceiling fabric is falling, and so we literally have a bunch of thumbtacks holding it up.
Yeah, but
that was 2 years ago, you guys.
Yeah, and it's still trucking.
And it's still working.
Yeah, you know, we're
So guess what? Your car's broken. You don't need a new car. You need to fix the car.
But, you know, it's just really one of those sacrifices that we've decided to make. And we're just going to keep pushing my car until it just doesn't and the wheels fall off. Sometimes you do have to make sacrifices and really outweigh the opportunity cost of, yeah, I might not have this thing that I really, really want, but, you know, that could be holding you back thousands of dollars from paying off your debt. So really stop and think, is this a want or is this a need? Okay,
and number 3, we didn't keep any spending money in our account at all. So we talked a little bit last time about how we are very firm believers of having a budget and really trying to follow that budget. And with that, we started noticing, like, we were following it, but we were still spending a bunch of money on things that we hadn't planned for, and we didn't need to be spending money on it. So I came up with the idea of, you know what, let's do this, where every week we're gonna look and see what are our expenses for the week. we're gonna take that money out so that it's ready to go for that. We have our stuff in like 2 accounts. We have it in our spending account and in like our bills account. So we move that money over to our bills account so that it's basically that money does not exist anymore. And then anything that's left over, if we know that there's like a birthday party or something that we needed to get, then we'll leave a little bit money out for that. But other than that, we literally would take everything in our bank account and just pay that towards our debt.
Yeah.
And then that was it. That way we didn't have that buffer money to be like, oh, well, we could go spend money on this. It was, no, we literally don't have any money to spend on that. So, and that honestly was the biggest tool to getting our debt knocked out. You would not believe how much money disappears when you just let it sit there for just in case. Or for those wants or for spending money or whatever. That stuff, it disappears and you have no idea where it goes.
It does.
So really, if you want the best effective way, do that. But the thing is, you have to get your emergency fund before you can do that. Because if you do that and then something comes up and you don't have an emergency fund, well, you're gonna kind of be in trouble.
Yeah, it's gonna be it's gonna take a bad situation and make it a lot worse.
Yeah, but when you have that emergency fund, you have that peace of mind knowing that if something does come up, then I have that money there to utilize for those emergencies. So the next thing that we did was cut up our credit cards. And I know we talked about this in the last video, and a lot of you are probably thinking, wow, you are crazy people. How do you not own a credit card? Well, guess what, guys? We have an emergency fund, so we don't need a credit card.
I think it's really important because when we came to that point of when we wrote out all of our debts and listed all of those out, we had that turning point moment of, oh my gosh, something has to change. And we decided, you know what, like we're done with debt. We're done with credit cards. We're done playing the game. And we were just tired of just throwing away money every month. So part of that turning point for us was saying we're not going back. And so we decided to cut up our credit cards and just get rid of all temptation to go back into debt. And when we did cut up those credit cards, there was just no more temptation. We cut them up. We physically could not use them. It wasn't anything like, oh, we'll just stick those in the drawer in case we need those. Because, if that temptation's there, in kind of our lives, we're kind of the people that, like, if someone gives us an inch, we're probably gonna take a mile. And so we just knew that we just did not have the self-control when it comes to credit cards. And we had to cut them up. And, I just think that was one thing that really, really jump-started our debt-free journey, was just taking that moment to go, we're not going to go back to this lifestyle anymore. And
it's one of those things too. I have a lot of people that really question our decision to not have a credit card. And I understand that that's not a normal thing. But debt is also a normal thing. And we honestly are trying to live our lives differently and not normally. And people, they're like, how can you live without a credit card? And I can tell you, it is absolutely 100% possible. I have never had a moment where I felt like, oh my gosh, I wish we had a credit card to pay for this thing. Because we have made those decisions to really to get our emergency fund and get our budgeting handled and things like that we don't have to worry about, oh no, we don't have enough money for whatever. It's just not something that we ever are concerned about. And I know one thing too that people always say to me is, well, you don't live in a house, so you don't have, like, what if you don't have, like, situations like if your water heater breaks or things like that. In those situations, that is when that emergency fund comes in handy. If you need to have more than $1,000 in your emergency fund, that is totally up to you. For us, we don't really need more than $1,000. And also too, a lot of those things, there are ways to get money quickly. Like we've talked about, sell stuff. Legally, yes. And I mean, a lot of times too, those things that we think of as emergencies, you don't have to fix things right away. And a lot of people are not okay with that idea, but you have to decide what is going to be more important to you. Is it going to be fixing this thing today, and then you're going to have this debt that's looming over you for months and years? Or are you going to make a sacrifice and save money to be able to pay cash for whatever it needs that you are needing to fix, and then it's done and over with and you don't have to think about it anymore? Now, granted, I do understand there are some situations where like medical things are going to come up and things like that. That's another thing that we're going to talk about on another day of why you should get insurance. But it's just one of those things that you have to make the choice to make a sacrifice to reach your goals. And if you're not willing to do everything that it takes to do that, you're not gonna get anywhere.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, we just love to share our stories because, you know, it's really changed our lives, it's changed our marriage, and it's really just changed us to become the people that we are today. And the other thing too is that this is how we've afforded to be able to pay cash for all of our Disney trips, is by following, you know, the steps of Dave Ramsey and the steps of what we're telling you.
Okay, so I know this video was a little ranty and kind of all over the place, but I do hope that there was some really good tips that you could take away from this to help you with your debt-free journey. If you have any questions for us, please leave those down in the comments below. We would love to answer those as best that we can. And do you guys have any tips for anybody else on how to pay off their debt? Is there anything that we didn't mention that you have done that's worked really well? We would love to hear those too. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you give us a big thumbs up. And if you want to see more content like this, mostly we talk about Disney, but right now we're talking a little bit about debt-free and things like that. So consider subscribing. We do have some Disney trips coming up in just a couple weeks, so please make sure you stay tuned for those and don't miss out, because those are gonna be so fun. I'm really excited about it. Alrighty guys, so that is all we have for you today. That's it. We'll see you guys next time. Bye.